I get this unshakable belief of superiority. I'm convinced I'm the most important person in the world, the most admired and the most desired as well.
I have seen people who think that their story should be told, for instance. They're writing into magazines, sharing their story as if they're the most special person on earth. And I've seen people who literally have the delusion that they are a messiah. They are Moses. They are some figure from history. So these delusions of grandeur can be relatively mild or in some cases pretty extreme. Hey friends, I'm Dr. Robert Duff. I am a licensed neuropsychologist in California. I also make mental health content here on YouTube, books, etc. I was approached recently to do a reaction to a new video series called How Are We Today? Rather than trying to explain it to you, let's go ahead and look at their website and we can kind of go through the description, learn a little bit more about the project, and I'll go ahead and react to a snippet that they provided me to react to. This is not sponsored. They're not paying me. They just wanted to collaborate in some way, and I thought, why not do a reaction? It's a little overdue, so if you're part of the team out there watching, apologies. But yeah, I think it's a really cool project. I have not watched any of it yet, so this is actually a real reaction, and I thought I would just want to share it with you guys. So let's take a look at what the actual website says about all of the stuff. Okay, so here is the page, howarewetoday.com. You can see the cast there. So just some friends and a beaver trying to change the world. A new sitcom focusing on expanding the conversation about mental health and providing helpful tools to utilize in your everyday life, day-to-day life. The show provides free education and free resources to those who need it most, including at-home therapeutic techniques, tools to find better care and access, and an inclusive space where a wide variety of conditions are presented. So basically it is from what I understand, it's kind of like a combination of like a sitcom style, but actually guided by a therapist. So this is the doctor there, Dr. Erin. So she is a clinical psychologist like myself. She brings expertise and engaging personality, leading through therapeutic activities. So, when I first saw this, I said, okay, this looks like Friends meets Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which I thought was a really cool thing. And it's made for public access television. I'm not sure where we can get it. Let's see here. Nationwide carriers. Yeah, PBS, a lot of public broadcast stations. In California, KVCR. And I want to see, can you get them on YouTube as well? Yeah, lots of stuff on YouTube as well, including full episodes. So let's go ahead and take a look at the snippet they sent me to react to. And I'll pause and talk about my impressions as we go along.
Do you have an example?
Sure. I can tell you what one looks like for me, but keep in mind, it looks different for everybody, right? But for me, it usually starts off with this state of euphoria.
Okay, so right off the bat, I think they're talking about bipolar. Also, I have some coffee here. This looks like a cozy vibe, so I'm going to go ahead and sip my coffee while I'm watching. If this is bipolar, or bipolar 2, you get what are called manic phases or hypomanic phases, where you have an elevation of energy, oftentimes creative energy. I see a typewriter there. You want to engage in projects, you get new ideas, you get new ways of doing things, a lot of creative energy, not often very well restrained. So sometimes you're not thinking about consequences of your actions or thinking about the logistics and the possibility that maybe this isn't a good idea. Along with that, you often have, decreased reasoning ability, decreased sense of consequences. You feel bulletproof or just unbreakable. A lot of times you're not sleeping very much, so there's this tired but wired sensation where physically you're exhausted, but your mind cannot stop. There's often hyperverbosity or hyperverbal, what do they call it? Pressured speech, where you're just speaking really, really, really fast and you can't get your thoughts together and just blah, 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 blah. So let's see what this looks like.
I feel this incredible energy out of nowhere. It's a feeling that I can take on the entire world. My mind gets these endless flow of thoughts, ideas, and obsessions, and even though the thoughts are intrusive and it should feel overwhelming, it doesn't. Starts off very logical.
You see, I was going from one thing to another, right? It doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be able to complete these projects that you start. And so people with bipolar, a lot of times they will have a lot of abandoned projects, a lot of abandoned ideas, things that they started and couldn't figure out a way to complete. Or a lot of times if I'm working with somebody in my clinical practice and I'm looking at their work history, there might be tons of jobs on there. You know, if I'm working with an older person, you know, throughout their life, they may have jumped from thing to thing to thing to thing. And so it can be really exciting and feel great and euphoric while you're in it, but the aftermath can be really frustrating.
Feels incredibly productive. Like I've found my flow, you know?
So you just get obsessive, like with OCD?
I mean, everyone gets tunnel vision from time to time.
Sure, but with bipolar disorder and the danger of it is how that behavior escalates. Because even though I should be overwhelmed by all these things, it doesn't feel that way. I feel like I can accomplish all of these tasks, and I also feel like I need to have everything as well. Because by then, I start taking risks, which gets real problematic really fast.
I've seen so many various risks that are taken from patients that I've worked with who have bipolar. Things like deciding to take off in the middle of night to start a new project somewhere else, like trying to drive 100, 200 miles. I had one patient literally describe to me putting together a trailer with duct tape and zip ties to take on the freeway up to wherever it was they were going to start this new farm. There are people who have engaged in, unfortunately, things like infidelity in their relationships on a whim. There are people that have sold things that they should not have sold or purchased things that they should not have purchased. So it can be, if not, well boundaried, really, really devastating for some people.
And it typically starts off with spending money. And when I say spending money, I mean full-blown shopping sprees, where I'm convinced I gotta have it all. I need this, I need that, I need those.
Yeah, credit limit be damned.
Oh yeah, I definitely need that.
Yeah, but everyone loves a little retail therapy.
I mean, sure, except during a manic episode, it doesn't feel like there's going to be any of those consequences, even when spending money isn't what you really want to be doing. And as far as retail therapy goes, there's a big difference between treating yourself and blowing your entire savings account.
I mean, there's a lot of people who aren't very financially responsible.
Yeah, but like if you imagine the difference between getting dinner too many times a week or deciding to, order food that's way more expensive than you were intending, but you're like, forget it, I'm just going to treat myself, versus blowing your kid's college fund, right? Or blowing your entire IRA or something like that on a new project, or just an inability to stop yourself. I was once in a restaurant, and I wrote about this in my book. I'm very, very certain this person was manic just in terms of his presentation. But my wife and I were sitting at a table, and he comes over and drops, I think it was $100 on the table. And he does the same to every other table in the restaurant, saying, hey, tip with this, tip with this. I just want to make somebody's day. He ordered, I think, a Bloody Mary, sat down, took one sip, paced around, and then left. And things like that can really, really get out of hand.
Yeah, the problem is that I'm disconnected from all the negative emotions of it all. Because typically I'm overcome by another common manic behavior, delusions of grandeur. I get this unshakable belief of superiority. I'm convinced I'm the most important person in the world, the most admired and the most desired as well. And I assume everybody wants to be with me, wishes that they could be me, that they love me. And all of it feels so real. It makes me feel like I'm some sort of celebrity, like I only hang out with the elite, the movers and the shakers, and all eyes are on me. What's he gonna do next?
Again, there's a range for this, right? I have seen people who think that their story should be told, for instance. They're writing into magazines, sharing their story as if they're the most special person on earth. And I've seen people who literally have the delusion that they are a messiah They are Moses. They are some figure from history. So these delusions of grandeur can be relatively mild or in some cases pretty extreme.
It's a feeling that everyone just wants to bask in my glow. And who doesn't want to feel like that sometimes?
So are delusions the same as hallucinations? Because I know hallucinations are typically associated with schizophrenia.
Well, hallucinations are more like your senses convincing you that something's real, right? But actually, the things you're hearing or seeing aren't real at all. With what I deal with, delusions, those are simply false beliefs.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked that.
No, it's totally fine, Barbara. In fact, it was a really good question.
One thing to point out, this may be something you already know, but there's a big difference between delusions and intrusive thoughts that you have in OCD. So like with OCD, you have intrusive thoughts that crash into your awareness and they freak you out. They make you feel uncomfortable. You want to resolve them in some way because you know they're out of place. They're what we would call in, the psychology world, ego dystonic. They don't fit with who you are as a person. Whereas delusions are ego syntonic, meaning they do match with who you are as a person, or at least who you think you are in that moment. So delusions, you don't have the sense that this is wrong, this is something from the outside coming in, and this shouldn't be my thought pattern. You believe it. This is your truth in that moment.
And this just illustrates how complex and nuanced the mental health spectrum really is, right? And why it's so important to get the right diagnosis and get on the right treatment plan, because if not, with what I'm going through, the consequences can be severe. And all of it can come to a head. Because by then, I feel invincible. I see no boundaries. There is no fear,
The no boundaries part. I know I'm interrupting a lot, but I have a lot of clinical examples here. Imagine being at a party and pulling aside a friend's spouse and propositioning them, hitting on them in a situation where that would not really be appropriate. You don't have that kind of friendship with your friends. You don't have that kind of relationship with your own spouse or other, partner. That is something I see a lot. It's like, okay, this guy's a creep, this woman's a creep because they are acting in these ways that are making me feel uncomfortable, when in reality, that's not them. That's only them when they're in this manic state, which can be very devastating for relationships and friendships.
no caution tape. So I just keep looking to push the limits. And that's what can make a manic episode so dangerous. You can't see the danger. The stop signs that should be there can become invisible. So I feel like there is nothing that should stop me from doing what I want to do. And then
The crash.
eventual crash. Because what comes next, for me, is typically a depressive episode, which is far more dangerous than a manic one. It's almost the complete inverse of what I was experiencing. The passion for the things I love to do is non-existent. Just an empty void of no emotions. There is
So that feeling of no emotions, no feelings at all, that's something called anhedonia, literally inability to feel, very common in depression. And with bipolar, depressive episodes don't always have to come right after manic episodes. But when you think about it, it's really logical that they would happen commonly because you have this high. Like I said, often you're not sleeping for days on end or very minimally for days on end, meaning like a week or more. And you're going through all these things. And then not only do you have to face the consequences of your actions, but physically you're exhausted. And so you have this physiological depression. And for many people, that's just what you need to kickstart the psychological aspect of depression too.
this struggle to exist. I stop eating. I isolate. And probably the worst, I don't sleep. My mind races and plays all of the hits: fear, anxiety, embarrassment, and self-loathing.
So compounding that exhaustion.
It all just piles up and my emotions flip. Irritable at the slightest inconvenience. Angry, cold, harsh, extremely harsh.
Do you become violent?
Well, that's a pretty popular misconception about bipolar people because while yes, people with bipolar disorder can exhibit aggression, the majority are nonviolent.
In my personal experience, I've never worked with a patient with bipolar that has been physically violent because of their bipolar. Certainly, I've had patients who are more likely to pick fights with people, usually verbally, whether that's a spouse, a loved one, or somebody at the store. They're going to be more, irritable and more likely to make jabs and stuff like that. But I've never, had a patient go get in fist fights or you decide, hey, the sudden impulses, I want to go hurt somebody, hurt my family. That's pretty rare and nothing I've seen clinically.
And unfortunately, a lot of them self-harm. And for me, that takes form in substance abuse, because I feel like that'll bury the emotions, right? But those emotions are a lot. That's really tough. Because besides dealing with the underlying depression, I'm constantly wrestling with the consequences from my past behavior. I can fixate on the shame of how I treated those I cared about, how I must have looked, behaved, how people must have really felt about me.
I will say a lot of times this comes from other people. When you're in a drawn-out manic phase, a lot of times your memories of what actually happened are pretty hazy. So a lot of times this is people reacting to you, and you don't exactly know what you did. You know that you are probably coming out of a mood state, but you don't know exactly what you did during that state. So that makes it even worse, because you're just getting this secondhand, and you're seeing the way that people are upset with you.
And sometimes I wonder if I just embellished the whole thing. Did I just make all this up? Did I let my ego distort reality?
That must really feel awful. But, I mean, don't we all do embarrassing things that we kind of feel stupid after? I know I do.
Same.
Yes, we all can, except when it comes to a depressive episode, those emotions just loop in your mind. All of those thoughts, just a gut punch again and again and again. It just never stops.
Everyone's depression is different. What he's describing is a very cognitive depression, right? Where you have those thoughts that are looping and continuing to open the wound over and over again. For some other people, it's much more of a physiological or like affective depression. So it's just very mood based. It's very physical based. Some people have all of the above. But just like the picture of mania isn't the same from person to person, the picture of depression isn't. So within that spectrum of bipolar, you can get many, many, many different types of presentations.
Because of that, the hope dissipates. I submit to the emptiness and become filled with indifference. And indifference is the most dangerous place to find myself in.
Not sure if they're going to go into the idea of suicidality here, but it would be very, very common and appropriate to talk about.
There is no empathy. There is only nothingness. Because if I am nothing, then I don't matter anymore. If I don't matter anymore, then I tell myself, what is the point of continuing on with any of this?
Okay, so that was the snippet from what I assume is the bipolar episode of How Are We Today? So these are longer episodes, and they gave me, a few clips to kind of choose from, or actually they chose this one for me, but, this was 7 or 8 minutes long. I think the episodes are more on the order of like half an hour, but I really like it. So yeah, like I said, it's sort of like this Friends type setup where they're in the apartment, it's messy, they're all in their pajamas and stuff, but they talk about real issues. And I think it was really well produced. I liked the way that they illustrated the mania, the depression, and a lot of common questions, right? The kind of chorus of questions from the other people in the apartment were things that you hear a lot. Like, okay, well, so what? I also do X, Y, Z, or, well, don't we all do that sometimes? And for any mental health issue, you're going to run into a lot of that. And so I think that this being sort of like a call and response, almost like an FAQ for bipolar, was really great. This is something that I think I may look into for my own kids to kind of show them if there's something I need to teach them more about, because they present it in a really well-produced way that's entertaining. And I think it's very clear. So I'm really excited to see, all the rest of the episodes and where this goes. If you would like to check it out, I'll put links in the description. I also showed you the website earlier. Looks like you can find it on a lot of public access channels as well as their YouTube, and I'm sure other places as well. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye.